Stream Elements says a dog door is now live. Streaming DCS World, F/A18 practice.
Yes. Test. 1 2 1 2.
Welcome to this train lesson on the use of the F-18's M61A2 20mm cannon. Mounted in the nose of the aircraft, it can be loaded with up to 578 rounds and has a firing rate of either 4,000 or 6,000 rounds per minute. For too close for missiles, the gun is a great option in a dogfight. I currently have the lesson paused as we talk about the air-to-air gun system. Press spacebar to continue.
To start, let's first get the AA gun set up. The easiest way to do this is by simply pressing aft on the weapon select switch, or press left shift and X. Please do so now. With the AA gun selected, note that the master mode was automatically set to AA. The left DDI displays the AA gun format, the HUD is in the gun auto acquisition mode, and the right DDI is in the AA radar page with air combat maneuvering mode selected. Let's first take a closer look at the AA gun format page on the left DDI. Above the wing form, you see the number of gun rounds remaining, 578, and below that you see the state of the master arm switch. On the left side of the page you have the gun round type selection of M50 or PGU-28. You want to make sure that this selection matches what you have loaded on the aircraft. Press the M50 push button to select M50 rounds. In the bottom of the left format are push buttons for high and low gun fire rate. Low fires the gun at 4,000 rounds per minute and high fires the gun at 6,000 rounds per minute. Select the high option. With no radar lock on the target, you will use the lead computing optical sight, also called the funnel. Simply put, with a wingspan entered, you will fly to place the wingtips of the target's aircraft just touching the sides of the funnel. When they are, you have a good firing solution to hit the target. To enter the correct target wingspan, press the UFC push button. Our target aircraft will be a MiG-29 with a wingspan of approximately 37 feet. The top option select window is marked WSPN for wingspan. Press the option select button to the left. This will allow us to enter a target wingspan. On the UFC keypad, type in 37 and then press enter on the UFC keypad. Press spacebar when done. With that done, you will now note that the WSPN or wingspan indication in the top right portion of the AA gun format page displays 037 to the right. Now let's take a look at the HUD. Currently, you are in the gun auto acquisition mode. This is indicated by the large dashed circle on the HUD. Also note that the selected weapon, gun, indicated near the bottom center of the HUD, and the number of rounds remaining below it. To lock up a target, simply fly to place your target within 5 miles inside the dashed circle. Until you have a target locked though, you can use the gun funnel. In addition to the gun auto acquisition mode, you also have the bore sight BST, vertical VACQ, and wide WACQ air combat maneuvering ACM modes. But we will talk about those in a separate lesson. When you are ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson. Ahead of you are 2 drone MiG-29s. Place them within the dashed circle on the HUD to lock one of them up. Upon doing so, you now have some new information on the HUD for a locked target. You have your VC closure, velocity and target range below it on the right side of the HUD. The locked target has a target designation box or diamond around it, and an aiming reticle with a pipper in the center. Along the outside of the aiming reticle is a line that indicates maximum gun range. Fly to place the pipper in the center of the aiming reticle over the target and pull the trigger when the target is within range. When the pipper is over the target and within range, a shoot cue will appear over the target. To unlock the target, press the undesignated button on your stick, or press. Good job! Now splash the second drone. Splash 2. Great job using the AA gun. This is a great weapon in close and when Winchester on missiles. Press escape to end the lesson.
Altitude. Altitude. Pull up, pull up!
What a great fucking song. Let's do it again.
Welcome to this train lesson on the use of the F-18's M61A2 20mm cam. Mounted in the nose of the aircraft, it can be loaded with up to 578 rounds and has a firing rate of either 4,000 or 6,000 rounds per minute. When too close for misses, the gun is a great option in a dogfight. It currently has lesser performance, as we talked about the air-to-air gun system. Press spacebar.
To start, let's first get the AA gun set up. The easiest way to do this is by simply pressing aft on the weapon select switch, or press left shift and X. Please do so. With the AA gun selected, note that the master mode was automatically set to AA. The left DDI displays the AA gun format, the HUD is in the gun auto acquisition mode, and the right DDI is in the AA radar page with air combat maneuvering mode selected. Let's first take a closer look at the AA gun format page on the left DDI. Above the wing form, you see the number of gun rounds remaining, 578, and below that you see the state of the master arm switch. On the left side of the page you have the gun round type selection of M50 or PGU-28. You want to make sure that this selection matches what you have loaded on the aircraft. Press the M50 push button to select M50 rounds. In the bottom of the left format are push buttons for high and low gun fire rate. Low fires the gun at 4,000 rounds per minute and high fires the gun at 6,000 rounds per minute. Select the high option. With no radar lock on the target, you will use the lead computing optical sight, also called the funnel. Simply put, with a wingspan entered, you will fly to place the wingtips of the target's aircraft just touching the sides of the funnel. When they are, you have a good firing solution to hit the target. To enter the correct target wingspan, press the UFC push button. Our target aircraft will be a MiG-29 with a wingspan of approximately 37 feet. The top option select window is marked WSPN for wingspan. Press the option select button to the left. This will allow us to enter a target wingspan. On the UFC keypad, type in 37 and then press enter on the UFC keypad. Press spacebar when done. With that done, you will now note that the WSPN or wingspan indication in the top right portion of the AA gun format page displays 037 to the right. Now let's take a look at the HUD. Currently, you are in the gun auto acquisition mode. This is indicated by the large dashed circle on the HUD. Also note that the selected weapon, gun, indicated near the bottom center of the HUD, and the number of rounds remaining below it. To lock up a target, simply fly to place your target within 5 miles inside the dashed circle. Until you have a target locked though, you can use the gun funnel. In addition to the gun auto acquisition mode, you also have the bore sight BST, vertical VACQ, and wide WACQ air combat maneuvering ACM modes.
What the fuck you talking about?
But we will talk about those in a separate lesson. When you are ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson.
Just do it.
Ahead of you are 2 drone MiG-29s. place them within the dashed circle on the HUD to lock one of them up. Upon doing so, you now have some new information on the HUD for a locked target. You have your VC closure, velocity, and target range below it on the right side of the HUD. The locked target has a target designation box or diamond around it, and an aiming reticle with a pipper in the center. Along the outside of the aiming reticle is a line that indicates maximum gun range. Fly to place the pipper in the center of the aiming reticle over the target and pull the trigger when the target is within range. When the pipper is over the target and within range, a shoot cue will appear over the target. To unlock the target, press the undesignated button on your stick, or press S. Good job. Now splash the second drone.
Where is he? Hey mate, thanks for joining. Have any questions? I got text to speech on, so hit me up. They come up on this guy real quick, I reckon. Of course I don't have a shoot Pippi yet. I can see him.
Splash 2. Great job using the AA gun. This is a great weapon in close and when Winchester on missiles. Press escape to end the lesson.
Flight controlled. Flight controlled. Altitude. Altitude.
The dog door says test.
Yo, I chose 6'9", dog yo, reppin' 56 OG. In the skies we fly, we laugh and defy gravity. First more operation, war box, no fear. With the boards we deploy, keeping enemies clear. Yeah, captain, my captain, I'm 25K, I was reigning to lead squadron on deck, never breaking the chains. Over 24's good, VFA 22, DCS just swinging, taking targets to skew. Into death from above, 069 dog door, in the sky we shove. Riding high with my crew, flying so free, 5-6 OG, the elite family. Pew, 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 it's a death playground, mission ready we stand. Strike hard, strike fast, conquer every command. From dawn till dusk, we live the dream. In digital battles, we raise a three. Fate on lock and load, missiles lit and bright. 069 dog door leads in the heat of the night. Electronic warfare in the virtual domain. Masterminds in sync, no shackles, no chain. It's a death from above. 069 dog door in the sky we show. Riding high with my crew, we fly so free. 56 OG, the elite family. We paint the skies with digital power. 069 dog door every second, every hour. Aces information, no mission too steep. Together we soar into infinity sweep. With 069 dog door, the skies are enthroned. In the world of DCS, our legacy's known. 56 OG, forever we reign. In virtual warfare, we bring the pain. We paint the skies with digital power. 069 dog door every second, every hour. Aces information, no mission too steep. Together we soar into infinity sweep. In the skies with digital power. 069 dog door every second, every hour. Aces information, no mission too steep. Together we soar into infinity sweep. Disguised with digital power. 069 dog door every second, every hour. Aces information, no mission too steep.
A key part of any mission is the ability to navigate to and from the target. Two such tools are automatic direction finding, or ADF, and tactical air navigation, or TACAN. ADF uses VOR stations located throughout the maps to get bearing-only information to them, and TACAN stations are co-located with many airfields, aircraft carriers, and some aerial refuelers. TACAN can provide both bearing and range, or just one of them depending on the source and TACAN mode used. In this lesson, we will discuss how to select ADF and TACAN navigation, and the steering information provided. I currently have the lesson paused as we first discuss a few items. Press spacebar to continue. For this lesson, we will be using an ADF example and then TACAN to navigate back to our home training base at Kobuleti. Let's start with the simpler ADF. To start, let's first select the Horizontal Situation Indicator, or HSI, for the left DDI. Press the menu Time push button on the left DDI to bring us to the tactical page. Note that this button will indicate menu when on the ground, but will show time when airborne. Let's press the same push button again to bring us to the support page. Now on the support page, press the HSI push button. The HSI is your primary navigation page that will display TACAN, waypoint, and ADF navigation data. In the center of the HSI is an aircraft symbol that represents your position from a top-down vantage. Your true airspeed is to the left of the symbol and ground speed to the right. Centered and around the aircraft symbol is a compass rose, and on the very top is a louver line that indicates your heading in regards to the compass rose. Along the top of the HSI is the SCL, or Scale, push button. Consecutive presses of this push button will cycle through the scale range options of the HSI. Press spacebar to continue. An ADF is assigned to a specific frequency, which can also be stored as a preset on one of the two radios. In this case, we have the VOR ADF near Kataisi Airfield preset as Channel 2 on Radio 1. Right now, Radio 1 is set to Channel 1, as you can see in the Channel Select window for Radio 1. To select a new channel preset, place your mouse over the Radio 1 select dial and rotate the mouse wheel forward until 2 is displayed. When you do, you will soon hear the characteristic ADF identification code for that VOR station. Press spacebar to continue. To display the bearing to the VOR station on the HSI, we need to set the UFC ADF function select switch to Radio 1. To do this, right mouse button click on the switch. With that done, you will now note a small circle along the outside of the compass rose at the 1 o'clock position. This is your bearing to the ADF signal. There is no range information though. As you can see, ADF is quite simple. Let's move on to TACAN. Press spacebar when ready. In order to display all TACAN information on the HSI and HUD, press the TCN or TACAN push button on the HSI. Upon doing so, it will be boxed. Now we need to turn on the TACAN and set the code of the desired station. Press the TACAN button on the UFC.
Oh, wow.
With the TACAN now selected on the UFC, we have three choices in the option select windows. TR is transmit receive and will provide both bearing and range guidance. RCV is for receive and will just provide bearing to the station. And AA is for air to air and will provide either bearing and range or just range depending on the aircraft. By default, we have TR selected, which is fine. The lower two option select windows allow you to select either an X or Y TACAN channel. For example, 67X. Now let's turn on the TACAN by pressing the on-off button on the UFC. On the scratch pad, we now see that the TACAN is on and a default value of 1. Select Clear on the UFC keypad to remove this. We will navigate to the TACAN station at Kobuleti Airfield, which has the TACAN code of 67X. Enter 67 on the UFC keypad and then press the Enter button on the UFC. After entering 67X and pressing Enter, press spacebar. With the TACAN station now selected, we have some new information on the HUD and HSI. On the right side of the HUD, we have the range to the station in nautical miles and the 3-digit code for the station to the right of the distance value. At the top of the HUD, along the heading tape, we have a steering bar that indicates the heading to the TACAN station. On the HSI, we have much more information. In the top left corner of the HSI, we have a data block with 3 rows. The top row is bearing, distance. The second row is time to go in minutes and seconds. And the bottom row is the station ID. On the outside of the compass rose is an inverted triangle with a T in the center. This indicates your heading to the station. There is a corresponding tail on the other side of the compass rose. Between the aircraft symbol and the T symbol is a 3-pronged symbol that represents the selected TACAN station. Press spacebar to continue. When a TACAN station has been selected, you can use the course set switch labeled CRS on the top right corner of the MPCD to set a course line that is centered on the selected station. Left click rotates the course line counterclockwise and a right mouse click moves it clockwise. When a course has been set, the course line will be displayed on the HSI and on the HUD, with dots to represent 4 and 8 degrees of course offset.
I don't know.
Press spacebar to continue.
About. Was the CRS the fucking what?
When a TACAN beacon is selected, you will also hear the coded ID. You can adjust the volume of this with the TACAN volume control knob labeled TCN on the volume panel. Press spacebar to continue. You can view airfield TACAN beacon channels by going to the F10 map, clicking on an airfield, and then reading the data of the airfield. This concludes our look at the HSI, ADF, and TACAN. When you are ready,
44.
press spacebar to unpause this lesson and practice navigating using the ADF and TACAN.
Very confusing. So should I be heading towards the circle or what? Or is it the 4-prong? Here's what that is.
Altitude. Altitude. Roll left.
Or not?
While TACAN navigation is a great tool to get back to your airfield or carrier, many times you will need the ability to set arbitrary navigation points. This is where waypoint navigation comes in. The F-18 allows you to have 3 sequences of waypoints that you could use to mark anything from a turn point, a target, or to a threat location. Waypoints can be created in both the mission editor and while in the cockpit. For this lesson though, we will focus on a waypoint sequence already created. I've currently paused the lesson. Press spacebar to continue.
Let's first set the left DDI to the HSI page. Press the time push button. We are now on the tactical page, so a press of the time push button again will bring us to the support page. Now on the support page, select the HSI push button. This will display the horizontal situation indicator. Much of this will look familiar from the TACAN lesson. Instead of pressing the TCN push button though, press the waypoint push button this time. This will box waypoint and allow display of more waypoint navigation information on the HSI and HUD. We are currently at waypoint 0, as indicated on the right side of the HUD and between the up and down arrows along the right side of the left DDI. Press the up arrow to select the next waypoint, waypoint 1. With waypoint 1 selected, note the distance to the waypoint, and the waypoint number is displayed on the right side of the HUD, and a steering bar to the waypoint is along the heading tape. On the HSI, you can now better see the waypoint marker that appears as a small circle with a dot in the center. By pressing the SEC1 push button, it will box it and display dashed connecting lines between the waypoints in the selected sequence. In the top right portion of the HSI, data of the selected waypoints is shown. The top row is the bearing and distance to the waypoint, and below is the hours, minutes, seconds to the waypoint. Inscribed inside the compass rows is a triangle that indicates the heading to the selected waypoint, with a corresponding tail opposite of it. Press spacebar to continue. As with TACAN, you can also set a course line through the selected waypoint. This can be useful by placing a waypoint on a runway and using the course line for a direct approach, or as a reference for the downwind leg of an overhead landing pattern. Press spacebar to continue. By selecting the Auto Waypoint Sequence option, the navigation system will automatically select the next waypoint in sequence as each waypoint is reached. This avoids having to manually select the next waypoint while navigating a sequence. When you are ready, I will unpause the lesson and allow you to navigate the waypoint sequence. Ahead of you is a sequence of waypoints along a low-altitude flight plane. Try to fly through each gate in sequence. Press spacebar to unpause the lesson. To more easily fly this sequence, you may wish to adjust the HSI scale. You can use this in conjunction with the next waypoint distance and steering cue on the HUD to best align yourself to intercept the next gate. At any point you can end this lesson by pressing the escape key.
controls. Flight controls. Roll left, roll left. Roll right, roll right. Roll left, roll left.
Hey, Rooks.
Pull up, pull up. Altitude. Altitude. Flight controls. Flight controls. Roll right, roll right. Altitude. Altitude.
In previous lessons, we learned how to take off and navigate, but what goes up must come down. In this lesson, we'll go over the basics of landing at an airfield in visual flight rules conditions using a straight-in approach. This will also be useful for the later instrument flight rules landing lesson. I currently have the lesson paused as I want to first outline the basics of an airfield VFR straight-in approach. Before flying this lesson, please make sure you are familiar with the HUD symbology as described in the manual and first lesson. Press spacebar to continue.
Come on.
We will start the approach 11 miles out at
Yep,
3,000
5
feet
miles,
bare
600
level
feet, ice-free
and
flight path.
260
Yep, for
knots
straight
on
in,
approach to
altitude,
runway
IFR.
07
Yep.
Echo Balletti.
Next.
Once at 5 miles, you will be at 1,500 feet, and this will place you on a 3-degree glide path to the runway.
3 degree.
To measure your glide path angle, reference your velocity vector on the HUD in relation to the pitch ladder. A 3-degree flight path is standard for an FA-18 landing. For a straight-in approach, we will keep the HUD.
After the lesson is unpaused, reduce your throttle to idle and fly through the gates ahead. Once your airspeed is below 250 knots, lower the landing gear by moving the landing gear control handle down. Do this by left-clicking the handle or by pressing the G key. Also lower the flaps to fold down by moving the flap switch in the down fold position, either by left-clicking on the switch twice or pressing left control F. Once the gear and flaps are down, keep flying through the gates and get the aircraft to an on-speed angle of attack. This is the proper AOA that will achieve the correct hook angle to catch the target wire of the carrier.
Yeah, got it.
You will want an angle of attack of 8.1 degrees,
Shut up.
which will place the velocity vector
Come on,
on the
shut
HUD
up.
in the center of the E bracket. Additionally, your angle of attack target of
8.1,
8.1
got it,
degrees
yep.
is
Come on,
indicated by
let's
the
go.
AOA indexer lights
Glide
to the left
path,
of
throttle,
the HUD
got it.
frame.
Shut up.
When at the on-speed AOA, the center yellow circle will be illuminated.
Yeah, I know.
Use the throttle to adjust your glide path
Throttle.
and pitch trim to adjust
Pitch
AOA
trim.
when the
Yep,
flaps
gotcha.
are down.
Let's do it.
Use the first part of this flight to practice stabilized on-speed flight.
Alright,
Press spacebar to continue.
let's go.
When you're ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson.
I just did. You dummy.
Being below 250 knots, go ahead and lower your landing gear and drop the flaps to full. Reduce your airspeed by setting the throttles to
Viewers
idle.
North says cheap
You may
viewers on
also wish to extend your
streamblue.com.
speed brake by
Remove
using
the
the speed
space
brake switch
at
on the right throttle
QHLV71
grip,
on.
or by pressing left shift B to get slower more quickly. Note the SPD BRK light on the instrument panel when the speed brake is extended. As you slow below 140 knots, retract the speed brake by using the speed brake switch or pressing left control B. Adjust the throttle and stick trim to maintain 8.1 degrees of angle of attack. Velocity vector inside the E bracket. Use the gates as a reference for your glide path by keeping the velocity vector in the center of the next gate.
Yes, mate. That's what I'm talking
At this
about,
point,
motherfucker.
you should be on speed with
Oh,
an
yeah.
angle of attack of 8.1 degrees, indicated by the velocity vector in the center of the E bracket on the HUD.
Yeah, it's
Use
6.4.
throttle
What are you going to
input
do about
adjust
it,
your
bitch?
glide path such that the E bracket is positioned over the runway threshold.
Alright.
Use pitch trim to keep on-speed AOA.
Yeah.
You should now be on a 3-degree glide path down the runway.
What do you want, 8 or fucking 3? I see. You want the fishy to say 8, and you want me to be at 5 degree. How about that? What do you think of them apples? Eh? How you like them apples? Getting right on. Bitch. Bitch tits.
Maintain on-speed AOA, and your glide path should be aligned with the runway threshold.
It is. Well, I'm probably a bit low. Come up a little bit. Oh, there it is. What I'm talking about. I might use a little bit of rudder. Head up. A little bit of nose up. A little bit of nose down. Left rudder's taking me
Maintain
the wrong
on-speed
way.
AOA and fly the aircraft onto the runway with a vertical velocity of no more than 750 feet per minute, as displayed over the HUD altitude indication. Do not flare. Once the nose wheel comes down, use the rudder to keep the aircraft centered down the runway, and
Yes,
use the
mate.
wheel brakes to bring her to a halt.
I'm down. Cop that. Are we done? I think we're done.
Well done. You can
Yeah.
end the lesson now by pressing the
Yep. I don't want to hear your voice. Goodbye. Next. Airfield overhead pattern landing. Alright.
In the previous lesson, we learned how to perform a simple, straight-in landing during VFR conditions. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to perform an overhead landing pattern. This should be your usual VFR landing pattern, and it will be very similar to a Case 1 landing pattern you'll use to land on the boat. I currently have the lesson paused, as I want to first outline the airfield overhead pattern. Before flying the lesson, please make sure you are familiar with the HUD symbology as described in the manual. Press spacebar to continue. Ahead of you is a series of gates that you will fly through. These are designed to instruct you on where you should be during the pattern. You will start the pattern at 800 feet and 350 knots, just to the left of the runway. At the end of the runway, brake to the left with a G of 1% of your airspeed. In this case,
You really want me to do
3.5 G for
350 knots in the pattern?
As your
crazy
speed
motherfucker.
decreases, relax the
Seriously,
G to
350
match the
knots.
speed. At 180 degrees of turn, level out on the downwind leg and descend to 600 feet, and you should be below 250 knots. When below 250 knots, lower your landing gear and lower the flaps to fold down. Press spacebar
We're at the
to
right of
continue.
the runway, dummy. Not to the left. Yes, 180 degrees, 250 knots. Lower your landing gear. Good. And lower the flaps to full. Alright.
Once on the downwind leg,
Oh, shut
establish
up.
yourself at 600 feet and slow the aircraft to on-speed angle of attack of 8.1 degrees.
Yep.
This can most easily be seen on the HUD by
The
keeping
E
the
bracket.
velocity indicator inside
at
the
that
E
staple.
bracket. To the left of the HUD frame are the angle of attack index or lights. When on speed, the center donut should be lit. Maintain on-speed angle of attack during the downwind leg. Press spacebar to continue.
Alright.
As you roll out on the runway heading, fly to place the E bracket on the runway threshold and
Yep.
use throttle adjustments to control your glide path to be 3 degrees.
Yeah.
Use pitch trim to keep the velocity vector centered in the E bracket.
Uh-huh.
Press spacebar to continue. Prior to touchdown, do not flare the aircraft, but rather let it fly into the runway with no more than 750 feet per minute, as indicated above your altitude on the HUD. That is an overview of what we will be doing. Before we try this out though, let's first set up a couple of things in the cockpit. First, set the altimeter display on the HUD to display radar altitude by moving the altitude switch on the HUD control panel to the down RDR position.
Got it.
Using what you learned in the TACAN lesson, set the TACAN to 67X and a course of 70 degrees. This is the TACAN channel for Kobuleti Airfield, and it will provide us useful information to line up our downwind and final approach legs of the pattern. Press spacebar when done, and you are ready to unpause the lesson. We are now flying a heading of 64 degrees at 370 knots and 1,000 feet. Fly through the gates ahead, which will place us at 800 feet and offset to the right of the runway. We don't want to directly overfly the runway. Maintain an airspeed of 350 knots. Cage the velocity vector on the HUD by pressing the Cage Uncage button to the right of the throttle grip or pressing C.
What the fuck? I want it to slow down. I think my throttle's all fucked up. Really don't need to be in AA mode. Yeah, I know. What is cage uncage velocity vector when it's at home? Any pointers would be appreciated. Let's try typing that in. Cage uncage. Throttle. Button 2. Close. One of them. Button 12, button 2, there it is. I am hitting it. Yeah. Why are you speeding up? Go down. Just cool your jets, baby. We got this. A little bit of nose up. A little bit less throttle. A little more nose up. You're going to tell me I missed the gates, aren't you? Well, whatever. I'm going to call that successful. Do-do-do. Instrument approach airfield landing. Let's do it. Done this. Nighttime, when visual approach are present, such as night or foul weather, blah, blah, blah.
When visual flight rules, VFR conditions, are not present, such as at night or foul weather, an instrument approach landing is used. As the name implies, this relies on the instruments to provide a correct azimuth and glide slope approach to the selected airfield. Although the U.S. Navy F-18 in DCS World has the Instrument Carrier Landing System, or ICLS, this is only used for carrier landings and not airfield landings. Even in the real world, U.S. F-18s do not have ILS. As such, will instead use a tack-end approach azimuth and a standard 3-degree glide slope from a known distance measuring equipment, DCS, and out. With a glide slope of 3 degrees, we can use a rule of thumb to calculate the altitude to start our descent, that being 300 feet of altitude for every nautical mile to the runway threshold. So, a DME of 10 nautical miles would be 3,000 feet. In this lesson, we'll use a typical final approach fix, FAF, with a DME of 10 nautical miles from the runway to start our descent. I currently have the lesson paused. Your QNH air pressure in inches is already correctly set to 29.92. In other missions, be sure to correctly set your altimeter based on the mission briefing QNH value. Press spacebar to continue.
Using what you learned before, go ahead and set your left DDI to the HSI page and the right DDI to the FCS page. You would most often have the HUD on the left DDI and the HSI on the MPCD, but we'll use this setup to more easily monitor the HSI on the left DDI. Enter the Batumi TACAN code of 16X and set a course line of 119 degrees. This can be found on the airfield approach plate. The course arrow on the HUD will be your primary azimuth steering reference.
Yeah, slow down,
Once
slow down,
complete,
slow down,
press
slow
space
down.
bar.
Fuck, come on. Do all the things at once. And here's 75 acronyms. DDI, HSI, FCS with the MPCD and the DDI and the TACAN Batumi. What the fucking... God. Alright, so... Learned... Most often have the HUD. Left DDI. HUD. It's a fucking HUD. And then... monitor HSI on the left. On the left DDI and HSI on the MC... What did you call it the right one? Is that what you're saying? Well, with the fucking MPs, they're all MPC. Alright, so HSI on this one. TAC, HSI. So, motherfucking... HUD on the frickin' DDI and HSI on the MPCD. Got it. Enter the Batumi TACAN of 16C. Check this shit out. TACAN. Boosh. I'm going to use my finger. Boosh. And then, what did he say? 16X. 1, 6, enter. The Corsair on the HUD will be your primary azimuth. Course heading on the HUD. So presumably that's that little hat there, little ass hat just there, that one. Okay, so hit spacebar when you're ready to fly into the water.
Before we unpause, let's contact Batumi Tower and let them know we're inbound. Press / to open the radio menu, then F5 to select ATC, and then F1 for Batumi. If you are using realistic radio, press the COM1 or COM2 to open the radio menu. Later, when Batumi Tower clears you for approach, press F1 to request landing permission. This will instruct the tower to turn on the approach lights. Press spacebar to continue.
Open. Why isn't that working? And then press F5.
We now have everything set up for our instrument approach based on TACAN navigation with a controlled 3-degree glide slope from a final approach fix at waypoint 6. Once unpaused, fly to and maintain an airspeed of 250 knots and fly through the gate ahead. Ahead of you are a series of gates to help you stay on azimuth and glide slope. Make sure to fly through each one. When ready, press spacebar to unpause. Here we go. Reduce throttle to idle until your speed falls to 250 knots and maintain that airspeed until we reach our fixed approach point at waypoint 6.
The fuck is it?
Note the TACAN heading on the HUD and HSI should be pointing directly ahead. To help slow down, you can use the speed brake by pressing left
Oh, that
shift
was a
B
failure.
to extend and B to retract. Fly through the gate ahead at waypoint 1.
Alright, this mission can fuck off. Let's do something fun. Carrier, taxi and takeoff. Let's go sploosh.
We will learn to taxi to an aircraft carrier catapult and take off in this lesson. In a previous lesson, we learned how to start up the F-18. When starting on a carrier, the only significant difference will be that you will set the INS switch to CV, for aircraft carrier, instead of ground during the inertial navigation system alignment. So we will just focus on the taxi and takeoff from a carrier in this lesson. Looking out of the cockpit to the right is the bow of the aircraft carrier, and catapults 1 to the right and catapult 2 to the left are located here. Looking ahead and a bit to our left are the waist catapults of numbers 3 and 4. In this lesson, we will taxi to, get hooked up to, and take off from catapult 2. As you may have noticed, catapult 1 is currently blocked by parked aircraft. Before taxiing forward, we will need to set our trim based on our total aircraft weight. You can find this on the checklist page from the support menu. It's located in the
What is this guy doing?
A/C WT aircraft weight line. As you can see, our bird weighs just 46,600 and change. If below 44,000 pounds, set 16 degrees of stab trim.
What?
If between 44 and
Oh, shut up.
49,000 pounds, set trim to 17 degrees, and if over 49,000 pounds, set trim to 19 degrees, and afterburners are required for takeoff. So go on to the FCS page of the support menu and use the trim hat to increase stab trim to 17. When set, press spacebar to continue.
What? But nothing's working though. What section follow trim based on their total aircraft. Find this on the checklist page. Support menu. CW. What the fuck? Yeah, that's not happening. That doesn't make any sense. Goodbye.
Today we will perform a Case 1, Case 2 carrier landing. This will be very similar to the VFR field overhead pattern. In fact, Navy pilots land at airfields much like they do on the boat to maintain this perishable skill. In regard to a Case 2 landing, this would be the visual approach element of the landing after being guided in from the Marshall Stack CV-1 approach. Case 1 is defined as having a 3,000-foot minimum cloud ceiling and 5 nautical miles of visibility. For today's lesson though, we are going to keep the aircraft carrier stationary, so we can provide some gates that will assist you in the pattern. Press space bar to continue.
Communications menu.
Ahead of you is a series of gates that you will fly through. These are designed to instruct you on where you should be during the pattern. You will start the pattern at 800 feet and 350 knots just starboard of the boat. During this phase of the landing, lower your arrestor hook by moving the arrestor hook handle in the down position. First starting out, we will not break into the pattern until 1.5 nautical miles past the bow of the boat. This will give you plenty of time to get on speed in the downwind leg. At the break, you will make a level turn with the G of 1% of your airspeed. In this case, 3.5 G for 350 knots. As your speed decreases, relax the G to match the speed. You may need to relax or tighten the turn to roll out 1.3 to 1.4 mile abeam the boat. At 180 degrees of turn, level out on the downwind leg and descend to 600 feet. You should be below 250 knots. Once below 250 knots, lower your landing gear and set the flaps to full. Press spacebar to continue. Once on the downwind leg, establish yourself at 600 feet and slow the aircraft to an on-speed angle of attack of 8.1 degrees. This can most easily be seen on the HUD by keeping the velocity indicator inside the E bracket. To the left of the HUD frame are the angle of attack indexer lights. When on speed, the center donut should be lit. Use of pitch trim is very important to set on-speed AOA. Maintain on-speed angle of attack during the downwind leg. Press spacebar to continue. Once your left wingtip is 5 seconds past the stern, begin a 30-degree bank to the left while keeping your velocity vector just below the horizon line on the HUD. This will place us in a steady rate of turn to the boat while descending. If the boat is moving with 25 to 30 knots of wind over the deck, start your turn when abeam the white of the round down on the stern of the boat. Your descent rate should be 100 to 200 feet per minute, as indicated on the HUD above the altitude box. 90 degrees through this turn, your altitude should be 500 feet. Past 90 degrees of turn, your descent rate should increase to 500 feet per minute. Only use your instruments for the first 90 degrees of turn. Don't peak. Use your throttle to control your rate of turn and pitch trim to control your airspeed. Press spacebar to continue. As you roll out on the landing course line, acquire the improved Fresnel lens optical landing system, or IFLOS, and match your glide slope such that the center light stays centered between the two green lines. If the light moves above center, you are too high and need to reduce throttle. If the light is below center, you are too low and risk a ramp strike unless you increase power. You will fly to maintain on-speed AOA while keeping the ball centered. Prior to touchdown, do not flare the aircraft, but rather let it fly onto the boat at ideally 750 feet per minute, as indicated above your altitude on the HUD. Press spacebar to continue. Before we give this a whirl, let's first set up the landing course line. Using what you learned in the TACAN lesson, set the TACAN to 74 X-ray and the carrier BRC of 350 degrees. This is the TACAN channel for the carrier, and it will provide us useful information to line up our downwind and final approach legs of the pattern. Set your HUD to show the radar altitude. To give us final notice when we should be passing over the wake of the boat when in the final turn, set the radar altimeter by your right knee to 370 feet by spinning the knob counterclockwise. Finally, set your left DDI to the HUD and your right DDI to the FCS page. Press spacebar to unpause. We are now flying a heading of 352 degrees and 349 knots and 1,900 feet. Fly through the gates ahead, which will place us at 800 feet and offset to the right of the boat. We don't want to directly overfly the boat, so we can first check to see if the deck is foul. Maintain an airspeed of 350 knots. Anytime you approach the carrier with the intent to land, you should do a hail R check, meaning check that the hook is down and engine anti-ice heat if required. Anti-skid switch is off. ILS is boxed on the HSI when ICLS is being used. External lights are set for daytime and rad alt set to the HUD. Cage the velocity vector on the HUD by pressing the cage uncage button on the throttle or press C. Lower the arrestor hook by clicking on the lever or pressing H. When at 1.5 miles from the bow, set the throttles to idle and follow the gates for a 180-degree turn into the downwind leg. The rate of turn will be based on a G that is 1% of our airspeed, in this case 3.5 G for 350 knots. Once your airspeed is below 250 knots, lower your landing gear and set the flaps to full. Once on the downwind leg of 173 degrees, establish on-speed AOA of 8.1 degrees by flying to maintain the velocity vector inside the E bracket on the HUD. Use nose up trim and throttle to set on-speed AOA, not your stick. Above the C-cell indication in the bottom right corner of your HSI is your distance from the course line. This should be between 1.3 and 1.4 miles.
Too low.
In this lesson, we'll learn about how to use the AIM-9L and M versions of the venerable Sidewinder short-range infrared guided air-to-air missile. Using a cooled infrared seeker, the Sidewinder locks onto the hot elements of a target, most often the engines. Best used in close-range dogfights, the Sidewinder is a fire and forget after launch. However, the Sidewinder can be decoyed by flares and is less effective against ground clutter. Today we're looking at the L and M versions. The AIM-9L, or Lima, entered production in 1977 and was the first all-aspect homing Sidewinder, meaning it could get a lock on a target at any aspect angle. However, a rear aspect provides much better detection. The Mike, or AIM-9M, is an improved version of the Lima with better flare rejection and a reduced smoke motor. In a later lesson, we'll take a look at the AIM-9X and the Joint Helmet Mounted Touring System. The Sidewinder can be used on both bore sight mode and slaved to a radar-locked target. I currently have the lesson paused as we discuss some of its features. To select a Sidewinder, press down on the weapon select switch, or press left, shift, and S. When selected with no target locked on radar, the Sidewinder will be in bore sight mode. This is indicated by the single reticle on the HUD that indicates the secret line of sight. Below on the HUD, you will notice the name of the weapon, 9M in this case, and the number of missiles remaining to the right. To employ a Sidewinder in this mode, fly to place the reticle over a target and wait for the secret tone to change to a higher pitch. This indicates the seeker sees and is tracking the target. You could then launch the missile by pulling the trigger or pressing the spacebar. To allow the seeker to self-track the target, press the cage-uncage button on your throttle or press C when you hear the lock tone. Once self-tracking, the seeker will automatically follow the target within its seeker field of regard. Before trying this though, let's first take a closer look at the AIM-9 format page on the left DDI. Press spacebar to continue. As with the AA gun, you have the remaining gun rounds and master arm indications. Along the wing form are indications for AIM-9 loading. 9L indicates stations with AIM-9L, and 9M indicates stations with AIM-9M. The selected station includes an SEL for selected below it. To cycle through AIM-9 stations, press the AIM-9 select switch on the weapon select switch, or press left shift S. This allows you to switch between AIM-9L and AIM-9M versions. When you are ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson. Two MiG-29 drone targets ahead of you. Fly to place the reticle over one of them until you hear a higher-pitched locked tone. You can either launch an AIM-9 now by pressing the trigger on the stick or spacebar on the keyboard, or initiate a self-track by pressing the cage-uncage button on the throttle, or pressing C. Once self-tracking, launch an AIM-9. It may take more than one to bring down the MiG.
Altitude. Altitude.
The fuck?
Splash 1. Keep an eye on the second MiG-29 and follow it. We will use a radar-slaved track for that one. Follow the second drone. To lock up the second drone on radar, press up on the sensor select switch or press right alt and semicolon. This will place the radar in air combat maneuvering or ACM mode.
Press up the sensor select switch. Right alt. Colon. Joy button 18 on the joystick, apparently. Back press.
Keep following the second drone. When ACM mode is first selected, the bore sight auto acquisition mode is selected. This is indicated by the dashed circle on the HUD. To lock up the target, fly to place the target within the dashed circle and have the target under 10 miles away.
Here we go.
Fly to keep the target at about 1 mile to keep the radar lock. On the HUD is a large, solid circle that acts as both the AIM-9 allowable steering error. In this lesson, we'll learn about how to use the AIM-9L and M versions of the venerable Sidewinder short-range infrared guided air-to-air missile. Using a cooled infrared seeker, the Sidewinder locks onto the hot elements of a target, most often the engines. Best used in close-range dogfights, the Sidewinder is a fire and forget after launch. However, the Sidewinder can be decoyed by flares and is less effective against ground clutter. Today we're looking at the L and M versions. The AIM-9L, or Lima, entered production in 1977 and was the first all-aspect homing Sidewinder, meaning it could get a lock on a target at any aspect angle. However, a rear aspect provides much better detection. The mic, or AIM-9M, is an improved version of the Lima with better flare rejection and a reduced smoke motor. In a later lesson, we'll take a look at the AIM-9X and the joint helmet mounted cueing system. The Sidewinder can be used on both bore sight mode and slaved to a radar locked target. I currently have the lesson paused as we discuss some of its features. To select a Sidewinder, press down on the weapon select switch, or press left, shift, and S. When selected with no target locked on radar, the Sidewinder will be in bore sight mode. This is indicated by the single reticle on the HUD that indicates the secret line of sight. Below on the HUD, you'll notice the name of the weapon, 9M in this case, and the number of missiles remaining to the right. To employ a Sidewinder in this mode, fly to place the reticle over a target and wait for the seeker tone to change to a higher pitch. This indicates the seeker sees and is tracking the target. You could then launch the missile by pulling the trigger or pressing the spacebar. To allow the seeker to self-track the target, press the cage-uncage button on your throttle or press C when you hear the lock tone. Once self-tracking, the seeker will automatically follow the target within its seeker field of regard. Before trying this though, let's first take a closer look at the AIM-9 format page on the left DDI. Press spacebar to continue. As with the AA gun, you have the remaining gun rounds and master arm indications. Along the wing form are indications for AIM-9 loading. 9L indicates stations with AIM-9L, and 9M indicates stations with AIM-9M. The selected station includes an SEL for selected below it. To cycle through AIM-9 stations, press the AIM-9 select switch on the weapon select switch, or press left shift S. This allows you to switch between AIM-9L and AIM-9M versions. When you are ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson. You now have 2 MiG-29 drone targets ahead of you. Fly to place the reticle over one of them until you hear a higher pitched lock tone. You can either launch an AIM-9 now by pressing the trigger on the stick or spacebar on the keyboard, or initiate a self-track by pressing the cage-uncage button on the throttle, or pressing C. Once self-tracking, launch an AIM-9. It may take more than one to bring down the MiG. Splash 1. Keep an eye on the second MiG-29 and follow it. We will use a radar-slaved track for that one. Follow the second drone. To lock up the second drone on radar, press up on the sensor select switch, or press right alt and semicolon. This will place the radar in air combat maneuvering or ACM mode. Keep following the second drone. When ACM mode is first selected, the bore sight auto acquisition mode is selected. This is indicated by the dashed circle on the HUD. To lock up the target, fly to place the target within the dashed circle and have the target under 10 miles away. Fly to keep the target at about 1 mile to keep the radar lock. On the HUD In this lesson, we'll explore employment of the Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, or AMRAAM. The AMRAAM replaced the older AIM-7 Sparrow with improved range, guidance, weight, and an embedded radar seeker in the nose cone. This allows the AMRAAM to guide on target without support from the host aircraft as the missile closes with the target. This in turn allows the launch aircraft to maneuver without loss of missile guidance to the target. The AMRAAM can be cued to target with the radar, or it can be launched at a close range just using the missile's seeker. Deliveries of the AIM-120B began in 1994 and replaced the AIM-120A. The AIM-120C was fielded in 1996 and has clipped wings to support internal storage, improved target detection, and greater range. As with all air-to-air missiles, engagement range is highly dependent on engagement aspect, launch altitude, and launch speed. You will see much greater launch distances at 30,000 feet on a closing target than 5,000 feet on a receding target. I currently have the lesson paused. To select the AMRAAM, press right on the weapon select switch, or press left shift and D. Let's first take a look at the AMRAAM format page on the left DDI. In the top left corner of the DDI, at push button 6, is the size selection. By pressing on the push button, you have selections to set weapon fusing size to small, medium, and large sized targets. We'll be shooting down some drone MiG-29s, so select small. To the right of the size selection is the radar cross-section, or RCS selection. Upon pressing this push button, you have options to set the expected radar cross-section of the target between small, medium, and large. Go ahead and set it to small. Along the right side of the DDI at push button 13 is the step push button. Successive presses cycle the selected AIM-120 stations. You can see AIM-120 loading on the wing form with AB for AIM-120B and AC for AIM-120C. The selected rail stations include the SEL indicator and dual rail stations with indications for right and left rail on the station. Press spacebar to continue. When we selected the AIM-120, we also set the radar on the right DDI to the AIM-120 default settings. These include a range scale of 40 miles, a 2-bar scan, an azimuth of 140 degrees, and an interleaved PRF. Let's keep these as is. Press spacebar to continue.
I don't know what you just said.
The large dashed circle is the most obvious indication of AMRAAM selection. This indicates the seeker field of view if launched with no radar lock first. This is termed Mad Dog launch, and the AMRAAM will lock on to intercept the first target it detects within the dashed reticle area out to 10 miles. Below the dashed reticle is the designation for the selected weapon, AB for AIM-120B and AC for AIM-120C. Below that is a visual indication, meaning there is no radar lock, and if launched now, the missile would be in Mad Dog mode. Press spacebar and I'll add some drone targets. On the right DDI radar page, we see a target, or called a hit, on the radar. Let's lock it up by moving the Throttle Designator Controller, or TDC, over it and locking it up. We do this by using the TDC switch on the throttle, or by pressing period, comma, backslash, and semicolon to slew it. Once the two vertical bars of the TDC are over the hit, press down on the TDC switch or press the enter button. Once the target is locked, press spacebar to continue. With the target locked up, some new information is now available on the HUD. On the HUD is a large, solid circle that acts as both the AIM-120 allowable steering error circle and as the normalized in-range display or NERD circle. Fly to keep the small steering dot inside the circle to give the missile the best chance of reaching the target. Along the outside of the circle are 3 triangle NERD indications. The one at 6 o'clock position is the missile maximum range, also called RMAX. Counterclockwise from it is the no escape range, also called RNE. When target range is within RNE, the target could change course and the missile would still have the energy to reach the target. The third indication, near the 2 o'clock position of the NERD circle, is the missile minimum range, called RMIN. The line inscribing the circle indicates target range, and you want this between RMAX and RMIN to launch the missile. Also on the HUD is a box or diamond that indicates the line of sight to the locked target. A box indicates a friendly target and a diamond indicates it as a hostile. If you see a large X across the HUD and radar display, your range to the target is less than the minimum range indication. When the target is between RMAX and RMIN, the steering dot is inside the ASE circle and weapon is armed, the shoot cue will appear and you can launch the missile by pulling the trigger on the stick or by pressing the spacebar. When between RNE and RMIN, the shoot indication will flash. Press spacebar to continue. Along the right side of the HUD are 3 lines of information. The top line is an indication of closure velocity, V sub c, and below that is target range in miles. Further down on the right side of the HUD is the timer field. When the locked target is outside the range of the AIM-120 radar seeker, the value will display the time from missile launch at which the AMRAAM seeker will turn on and hunt down the target. This is shown as the time in seconds and then ACT. Once the range of the seeker in the AMRAAM is less than approximately 10 miles, the time changes to time to go until the missile impacts the target. This is displayed as remaining time and then TTG. The ACT and TTG will be in reference to the last AIM-120 launched. When the target range is 15 miles, launch an AMRAAM by pressing and holding the trigger. If the first does not succeed, try again. Splash 1. Go ahead and lock up the target flying towards you and press spacebar. Don't engage it. If you don't see one on the radar, press the up arrow on the radar to increase its display range.
Quite confused.
Take a look at the air-to-air radar format on the right DDI. You'll note that much of the information on the HUD is duplicated there and includes an ASE circle, shoot cue, steering dot, and range indication as along the azimuth steering line to the target.
It does.
The locked target has the antenna azimuth line running through it and has its speed as Mach to the left and its altitude to the right. The Rmax, Rne, and Rmin are displayed along the antenna azimuth line. When the AMRAAM is launched, a triangular fly-out symbol appears on the azimuth steering line and travels to the target. Once the missile seeker is active, an A appears below the fly-out symbol. To break a lock, press the undesignated button on the stick or press S. Press spacebar to continue. As noted earlier, you can also use the AMRAAM with no radar lock. Termed visual mode, simply fly to place a target within 10 miles inside the HUD reticle and launch the missile. The AMRAAM will go after the first target it detects, hostile or friendly. Practice using the AIM-120 against the remaining drones and press escape when you wish to end the lesson. Welcome to this training lesson on use of the M61A2 20mm cannon against ground targets. Mounted in the nose of the aircraft, it can be loaded with up to 578 rounds and has a firing rate of either 4,000 rounds or 6,000 rounds per minute. When you need precise fire against unarmed or lightly armed targets, the gun can be a great choice. I currently have the lesson paused so we can talk about the gun system in AG use. Press spacebar to continue. Confirm that the master arm switch is already set to arm and set the master mode to AG for air to ground or press 2. On the left DDI, we see that we have 578 rounds loaded. Master arm switch is set to arm and that we have a clean aircraft. Next to push button 11, we have the AG gun selection. Go ahead and press it. We are now looking at the AG gun format page on the left DDI. On this page, we can select the gun mode, round type selection, rate of fire, and UFC entry for manual mode. Along the left side of the page, we see that we have mode options of continuously computed impact point, or CCIP, and manual, or man mode. CCIP is boxed, indicated it is the active mode. We'll come back to this soon. Below the mode selection on push buttons 1 and 2 are selections for either M50 or PBU-28 gun rounds. The selection here should match what was selected for the aircraft in the mission editor. You can keep this as is. Along the bottom left of the page are selections for a high rate of fire of 6,000 rounds per minute or a low rate of fire of 4,000 rounds per minute. Note that gun is boxed with a ready indication in the top right portion of the page, meaning the gun will fire when you pull the trigger. Press spacebar to continue. Let's shift our look to the HUD now, which is in AG gun CCIP mode. The most important element of the AG gun HUD is the CCIP gun reticle near the center of the HUD. When showing valid range, it acts as a death dot. You simply fly to place the pipper over the target and fire when the in RNG cue is displayed. Surrounding the pipper dot is a 50mm reticle composed of tick marks, each representing 1,000 feet of slant range. As you get closer to the target, a range tape will unwind counterclockwise around the reticle from 23,000 feet to 0 feet. Inscribed inside the reticle will be a line that indicates the current range to the spot under the reticle pipper. Inscribed outside the aiming reticle is the AG gun maximum range. When the current range line is less than the maximum range Q, the in range will be displayed, and you can fire the gun with great accuracy. Press spacebar to continue. Also on the AG gun HUD is a horizontal bar with what appears to be upturned wings on the end. This is the pull-up Q, and this is there to advise you of potential ground collision. It is not a weapon fragmentation warning. When the velocity vector is below the pull-up Q, the brake X will appear on the HUD. Along the right side of the HUD is your selected AG gun mode. In this case, CCIP and the selected weapon and number of rounds remaining. Okay, too much talk, not enough Bert. Let's try this out and then we'll talk about the manual mode.
Damn straight,
Press
shut up.
spacebar to unpause and kill some helpless trucks. Ahead of you at waypoint 1 is a group of target trucks in the center of an abandoned airfield. The targets are also marked with a gate and red smoke, impossible to miss. As you get closer to the target group, descend on the target and place the CCIP gun pipper over one of the trucks and squeeze the trigger to fire the gun. Once you've destroyed one, we'll discuss manual mode.
Altitude. Altitude.
Good job, Annie Oakley. When you're ready to talk about the AG gun in manual mode, level your wings and press spacebar. I've repaused the mission so we can discuss AG gun in manual mode. If you are not already there, go back to the AG gun format page on the left DDI. Press spacebar when ready to continue. First, select manual mode by pressing push button 4 on the left DDI. Most of this will look the same from the CCIP mode, but we now have a UFC legend next to push button 14. Go ahead and press it. We will now enter a milliradians or mils setting for the fixed gun sight on the HUD. You can use a manual mil setting sight, much like a fixed World War II bombing sight, or what you find on older aircraft like the F-5E. On the top option select window, RTCL is displayed, short for reticle. Press the option select button to the left to select. When selected, a colon will appear to the left of RTCL. Now use the UFC keypad to enter a mil value between 0 and 270 and press enter. Try 10. Upon doing so, the AG gun reticle and pipper will be adjusted to a fixed location on the HUD. The AG gun mode and mil setting will be displayed on the right side of the HUD, and the mil setting will appear to the right of the RTCL indication on the AG gun format page. Press spacebar when ready to unpause the lesson and try this out. Press escape when you are ready to end the lesson.
Altitude. 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 Pull up!
10 can fuck off. I don't want that setting. How did I set that? What was it? UFC maybe?
Altitude. Altitude. Pull up! Pull up!
Oh, bang. Where the bastard was. I missed one.
In this lesson, we'll take a look at the use of unguided rockets. Like the air-to-ground gun, it is a simple point-and-shoot weapon system against unarmed and lightly armed targets. It's an area effect weapon and not designed for precision attack. As such, it's often used in a ripple fire mode in which all rockets in the pod fire at once. However, you can also fire one rocket at a time. We have both 2.75-inch rockets loaded on our inboard stations in 19-rocket Lao-68 pods and 5-inch Zuni rockets on the outboard stations in 4-rocket Lao-10 pods. From the mission editor, the inboard rocket stations are hardwired for ripple fire mode and the outboard stations are set to single fire mode. First, select AG Master Mode. On the left DDI, under the top row of push buttons, are selections for 10S and 68R. 10S indicates Lao-10 with Zuni rockets set to single fire mode, and 68R indicates Lao-68 with 2.5-inch rockets set to ripple fire mode. Select 10S at push button 6. We are now looking at the rocket's format page on the left DDI. On this page we can select the rocket delivery mode, launch type selection, hot gun, and UFC entry for manual mode. Along the left side of the page, we see that we have mode options of continuously computed impact point or CCIP and manual or man mode. CCIP is boxed, indicated it is the active mode. We'll come back to these soon. Below the mode selection on push buttons 2 and 3 are selections for either single or salvo. When single is selected, rockets will just be launched from the selected rocket pod. A selected pod is indicated as boxed on the wing form. When salvo is selected, all rocket pods of the selected type will fire their rockets. Note that either one rocket per pod or all rockets per pod will be launched based on the single and ripple fire selections in the mission editor. In the top right of the page at push button 11 is the selection for hot gun. When selected, gun is boxed with a ready indication to the left. In hot gun mode, pulling the trigger will fire the gun with the gun cross on the HUD acting as your bore sight aiming reference. Below the hot gun selection is the step option at push button 13. Successive presses of step cycles through the selected rocket pod of the selected type when in single mode. One final note on the rocket format page, a diamond symbol under the wing form indicates an adapter to carry more than one weapon on the station. Press spacebar to continue. Let's look at the HUD now, which is in rocket CCIP mode. The most important element of the rocket HUD is the CCIP gun reticle near the center of the HUD. When showing valid range, it acts as a dot of destruction and mayhem. Fly to place the pipper over a target and press the weapon release button, or press enter when the in-range cue is displayed to rain your fury on the target. Around the center pipper dot is a 50 mil reticle composed of tick marks, each representing 1,000 feet of slant range. As you get closer to the target, a range tape will unwind counterclockwise around the reticle from 23,000 feet to 0 feet. Inscribed inside the reticle will be a line that indicates the current range to the spot under the reticle pipper. Inscribed outside the aiming reticle is the rocket maximum range indication line. When the current range line is less than the maximum range line, in RNG will be displayed on the HUD and you can fire rockets with accuracy. Press spacebar to... Also on the rocket HUD is a horizontal bar with what appears to be upturned wings on the end. This is the pull-up cue, and this is there to advise you of potential ground collision. It is not a weapon fragmentation warning. When the velocity vector is below the pull-up cue, the brake X will appear on the HUD. The rocket element is located on the right side of the HUD and indicates our selected mode, CCIP, and a number of rockets remaining, in this case, 22. Near the top center of the HUD is the bore sight line of the M61A2 gun, and this is your gun cross for hot gun mode. Press spacebar to unpause and kill some helpless trucks. Ahead of you at waypoint 1 are groups of target trucks at an abandoned airfield. The targets are also marked with a gate and red smoke. As you get closer to the target group, descend on the target and place the CCIP rocket pipper over one of the truck groups and press the weapon release button, or press right alt and spacebar to fire rockets. If you have hot gun enabled, you can also fire the gun with the trigger or spacebar. Once you've destroyed a truck, we'll discuss manual mode.
Altitude. Altitude.
The hell? I'm very confused. Oh, don't get it.
black smoke. An Allied unit retreating to Tobruk was engaged by an armed Axis convoy. The Allied unit's RAF forward air controller survived the attack and is taken to high ground overlooking the main road. He will assist you by calling in artillery smoke markers to highlight the enemy convoy's position as it makes its way to Tobruk. Press the space bar to contact your forward air controller. Good luck.
Well, that didn't go well. Oh no.